Hey guys, welcome back to part 2 of this 3-part series on this Infiniti restoration project. On our last episode, you guys saw we washed the vehicle, we washed it with clean slate, and we made sure that we washed it properly so that we didn't saw any further scratches and swirls. You guys saw from the outside how filthy it was and how bad and neglected the paint was. Now that the car is fully clean and dry, we pulled it inside, and to be truthful with you guys, the paint looks a lot worse now that it's clean because you can clearly see all the scratches and swirls without any kind of waxes or glazes to kind of hide those imperfections. So you see the paint for what it is and what it truly looks like. Now we're gonna go ahead and analyze it so that we can figure out what's our next step in this process to get this paint looking to brand new. So the first thing I do want to point out is that I don't know if you guys saw before when we were inspecting the paint when it was dirty, we had a bird poop right here, and as you guys can see, there's an etching on there now. It looks very nasty, and that's gonna need some polishing work to get removed. We do have some deeper scratches such as here. We have some over here, here, and along this area right here. To inspect the scratches and swirls that are in the paint, we're using our Ultra Bright Mini to go ahead and illuminate the surface so that we can see the scratches and swirls. On this side, you have this large 150 lumens kind of bar, which kind of allows you to inspect a wider area, such as this hood right here. As you guys can see, there's a ton of scratches and swirls that are in the paint, especially once we get towards like this very lit area. It also features 130 lumens kind of direct light so that you can inspect specific areas such as these heavier scratches and swirls. This paint, it's truly neglected. It doesn't look good. It looks very trashed. I'm not sure if you guys catch it on camera because of all the metallic flake that this paint has, but the paint truly does have a cloudy look to it. It doesn't look its best, and we do have a ton of scratches and swirls all over the place. You have this right here, which he had something on there and he was kind of, scratching away with a dry towel, or who knows what he used. The owner of this vehicle probably most likely went to a drive-through car wash. You have a lot of bird etchings right here, and that's another thing that I do want to bring up. This is the type of damage that you can go and expect whenever you get bird poop on your paint and don't wipe it off properly with a quick detail spray. So as we work our way around the vehicle, I'm not sure how well the camera catches this, but in person, it's clear as day. The scratches and swirls are very, very bad. The roof is bad. So this is definitely gonna take a lot of work to go ahead and restore. So luckily, we have all the stuff that we need here in our detail garage. We're gonna go ahead and, go over the compounds and polishes, the pads, the choice of machines so that we know what to do and what to attack this paint with. All right guys, so now that we've inspected the paint, we know what we're working with, and now we just have to prep the surface by clay barring the paint. Now we're gonna clay bar the paint simply because, even though you look at the paint, you look at the car, it looks brand new, right? But as you guys see the scratches and swirls that are on this vehicle, they're very bad. Even though the car's on the newer side, I'll be honest, my 04 truck looks a lot better than the paint on this car. So we're gonna be using our clay luber along with a piece of our OG clay bar. Now, the reason I'm using the OG clay bar is because it's a mix between a light and a medium. So this right here is gonna allow me to safely and effectively glide over the surface. I know I made the car sound very bad, but the contamination on the paint is actually not that bad. All right, so now that we have our piece of clay, we're gonna go ahead and knead it into like a little ball. Once you've kneaded it into a little ball, you can simply squish it. So now that you can grab it like that, like so, you're good. Now you wanna grab your clay luber, and then we're gonna go ahead and start working on the paint. Clay luber is gonna go ahead and gently lubricate the surface. You wanna make sure that you spray a good amount. So you wanna make sure you saturate the area and get the area covered so that you get the best slickness. You also want to spray your clay bar to add some lubrication, and all you want to do is gently glide it left and right. Now this is going to go ahead and pick up any embedded contamination such as fallout, any kind of dirt, mud that kind of bonds to the surface of your paint. This kind of acts like an exfoliator to the pores of your paint. Glide left and right. Anything that you do on your car, you want to make sure that you're doing it in a straight motion. You don't want to risk doing a circular motion, because if you do that, if any of this contamination gets stuck to the clay bar or any kind of fine debris like rocks, chips, or anything like that, that can actually act as an abrasive to the paint, and it's going to furthermore scratch the paint, which is something that we don't want because that's what we're trying to remove in the first place. So just make sure you can work in a crosshatch motion, left and right, up and down, however you want to do it, and then continue by doing the whole panel. Once you know what the section, you can go ahead and wipe it right off with a microfiber towel. But for now, we're actually gonna go ahead and do the rest of the hood so that we fully decontaminate the hood. We'll clean it up, and then we'll proceed with the next step. At this point of the process, I'm actually rekneading my clay bar just because all that contamination that I pulled off the surface is now on the surface of my clay bar. Now I'm gonna go to reknead it so that that same contamination doesn't get back onto my paint and scratch up the finish. As you go along the vehicle, you wanna make sure that you do this process often so that you don't risk scratching the paint or marring the paint. You want to make sure that every time that you reknead your clay bar, you can reknead it to a fresh, clean surface. If you ever get to a surface that it just looks dirty and you can't get it to a nice, clean surface, then that's when you'll know you'll have to replace your clay bar. So that's why we always recommend that you get a chunk of it at a time, simply because you're going to go through it and you don't want to run through your whole clay bar just like that. So cut it up in sections so that you can go ahead and use it wisely and as effectively as possible. Once you're done clay barring a section, we recommend that you wipe it down with the workhorse towel. You can go ahead and use this type of towels to go ahead and just simply wipe off any of the excess of the clay lubricant and any contamination that may have been left behind on the surface of the paint. And this also keeps your area clean so that you don't have any of this residue interfering with your further results. So simply wipe it down. You can use a towel and then just flip it around to a dry side to pick up any of the excess. And then once you're done with that, you're good to go, and then we can go ahead and proceed to the next step. So now that we're done clay barring the hood and the whole front of the vehicle, we're going to proceed to the next step, which is wipeout. Now, wipeout is a surface cleanser, so this is going to remove any further oils, grime that's on the surface from either clay barring it or any of that dust that settled on the paint whilst we were cleaning it. So we're going to go ahead and use this as a surface cleanser. This is a very easy to use product. All you have to do is spray it onto the surface and wipe it right off, just like a detail spray. So spray an ample amount, and like I said, this is gonna break down any further oils like waxes and sealants that is on the paint so that when we go for a paint correction, we'll see the paint for what it truly is. And it doesn't hurt, you know, even if you're not doing paint correction, I always recommend using this product so that whenever you apply like a wax, a sealant, you know, even the ceramic, especially a ceramic coating, you wanna make sure you do this because this is gonna go ahead and preserve and clean the paint so that when you apply any of those type of coatings, they have the best bond possible. So I'm just gonna go ahead and finish up the rest of the front end. And then once I'm done, I'll come back to you guys and we'll start off with the next step, which is the paint correction. All right guys, so we're back. Our paint is clean, it's decontaminated, and it's prepped for paint correction. Now in front of me, we have our Chemical Guys V line. Now, we have a whole line of compounds and polishes just because you never know what you're gonna be faced with. Like this car right here, it's a perfect example. Even though you got a brand new car, maybe you just need this V36 and V38 in your life, but even if it's a brand new car, you can see that there's still some heavy neglect on this paint that's going to require a heavier grade compound to go ahead and remove those imperfections. Typically, we recommend using the least aggressive approach as possible, which is going to be V36 light cutting polish with an orange cutting pad. Now that's going to work out great for light to moderate scratches and swirls, but just judging from the paint itself, I'm pretty sure we're going to have to go ahead and use a compound. I don't want to go with the super aggressive compound like V32 unless I absolutely necessarily have to. I'm going to go ahead and start off with V34, which is a hybrid compound, which is going to cut as a medium grade compound and finish as a lighter, finer polish. So that's going to work out great to go ahead and kind of figure out where we are as far as which chemical we need here. Just because when it comes down to paint correction, you never know what you need. There's not one product that's going to remove any level of scratches and swirls. You're going to need different levels of grits as far as like the product itself in order for you to correct the scratches and swirls that you're working on. All right, so now that we figured out which compound we're going to go with, now it's time to choose our pad. Now in front of me, I have two pads here. I have a white polishing pad and I have an orange cutting pad. Now I'm going to go ahead and utilize the orange cutting pad to go ahead and use with the V34 just because this is going to help expedite the process of breaking down the abrasives that are within V34, and so we get a nice aggressive cut. This right here works out great whenever you're using a DA polisher, which brings me to my next point of the topic, which is our polisher itself. I'm using the Torque 15 DA. Now, the reason I'm using the Torque 15 DA is because I love the 15mm long throw. Since we're working on the hood here, it's going to work out great to go ahead and get more surface coverage than a regular 8mm polisher such as the Torque X. So enough with the talking, I'm going to go ahead and begin by flipping over my polisher here, and I'm going to go ahead and put on my orange pad here, and I'm going to do my best to go ahead and center it you want to make sure that you do your best as far as centering the polisher and the pad on it so that you get the most consistent and the most even cut as possible. You don't want to have anything, you don't want to put your machine off balance, because then you have like this funky thing going on and you don't get that consistent cut because all this leftover pad is just kind of hanging off and it's not giving the pressure whenever you push down into the polisher head to go ahead and give that even cut throughout the vehicle. So make sure you center it. And before we start, we're actually going to be using our pad conditioner. I know someone tried to write it out there. It didn't really work out too well for that guy, but we know what it is. Now we're going to go ahead and simply spray onto the pad surface. I like giving it 2 nice sprays, and that saturates the pad so that it stays nice conditioned and we don't build up any excess heat throughout the polishing process. So next, we're going to go ahead and get our V34. Before you use any of your products, you want to make sure you shake them up just so that you mix up any of the contents inside so that they're activated. Once you do that, go ahead and apply 5 dime-sized drops. And that's a great rule of thumb. 5-inch pad, 5 dime-sized drops. And just work your way around. Try to get it as even as possible. And there we are. We'll set that down, put that there, and then we'll go ahead and move on to the car. All right, guys, so off camera, I actually went ahead and just masked off the area into like a little 2x2 section. The reason I'm doing this is because I want to make sure that you guys see that hard 50-50 split of what's polished and what has not been polished. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and begin by blotting off my product onto this little section here. And you want to make sure that you spread it out evenly and spread it out on speed setting 1 so that you get this product all nicely and covered right here. All right, so now that that has been spread out onto the surface, we're gonna go ahead and work it on speed setting 6. One thing I do wanna mention is I'm not putting a ton of pressure on this machine. I'm simply allowing the weight of the machine to kind of hold its own. All I'm doing is keeping this backing plate parallel to the surface. So I'm gonna be applying just light, moderate amount of pressure just so that it stays flat. If it goes to the side, you're not gonna get a consistent cut. So you wanna make sure that this backing plate stays completely parallel to the surface that you're working on at all times. Turn this sucker on speed setting 6 and let's get polishing. All right, guys, now we're done. We're gonna go ahead and set our machine down. We're gonna grab our workhorse towel and we're gonna go ahead and buff off any excess product. Now, right off the bat, I gotta be honest with you guys, this thing looks amazing. It looks 50 times better than what it was before. I cannot wait to pull off this tape just to see that hard 50-50 split so you guys can see that correction that we just got. Now, one thing I did forget to mention is the speed of the movement that I'm moving the polisher is actually 1 inch per second. There are no fillers in the V-Line. It's a completely water-based product, so there are no oils, there are no fillers that are gonna make the illusion of the paint look a lot better, and then you find yourself washing your car and a week the paint looks back to what it was. So none of that sorcery stuff. The results that you get, that's what you get. There's no magic there. Those are the raw results. That looks amazing if you ask me. We're gonna go ahead and get further refinement. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna get my Torque 15DA. I'm gonna take off my cutting pad and I'm gonna go ahead and put on my polishing pad. Now the reason I'm putting my polishing pad on is because I wanna see how great and how best the clarity we can get on this paint. So the next product I'm gonna use is V38, which is a final polish. We are skipping V36 just because that's a light cutting polish. We've already removed the imperfections that we wanted to go ahead and remove. Now it's time for us to jewel and finesse the paint with V38 final polish. It hardly has any abrasives at all. This is gonna work out great to simply polish the paint, refine it, smoothen it out, and it's also gonna go ahead and give more clarity to the shine. So we'll set that down. And same thing, just like how you did with the V34, all you wanna go ahead and do is blot it out onto the surface. Remember, this is a finer polish, so we're not gonna work it as aggressively, such as like the V34. We're gonna go ahead and more so massage it in. So this is gonna be more of a speed setting 3, 4 kind of deal. So same thing, spread it out, speed setting 1. Once you spread it out on speed setting 1, now you can go ahead and throw it on speed setting 3 or 4, depending on the machine that you're using, so that it refines the paint, smoothens it out, brings out that best clarity. We're gonna go ahead and throw it on speed setting 4, and we're gonna go ahead and polish it till we get that nice high shine finish. All right, so now that we're done, we're gonna go ahead and grab our towel again, wipe off the excess of the product, and reveal that nice high gloss shine. And in a second here, I'll actually go ahead and remove this tape, just so you guys can see that hard line. Next thing I wanna go ahead and do, I'm gonna go ahead and use Wipeout once more. This is just gonna remove any kind of compound residue, so that we 100% get the clarity and what's the actual condition of the paint. You know, we don't wanna get hazy results. We want to make sure that the results that we see are the results that we actually got. Cool. Check that out, guys. Not only do I even care about the scratches and swirls, just check out that clarity. The paint looks a lot more bright. It has a deeper shade of blue. It looks a lot more amazing than it did before. Even though it's a brand new car, it could have definitely done with some polishing work, and that's what a V34 and V38 can do for your paint. It gives you that perfect cut to go ahead and remove that level of oxidation, scratches, and swirls, and anything that's clouding the vision of your true depth of your paint. I'll go ahead and pull out my LED inspection light, and I'll kind of hover between a polished and an unpolished side. So we have our unpolished side here. I don't know if you guys can catch those scratches and swirls, and I'll slowly just move over to the polished side. You guys can see it's a lot deeper shade of blue. It looks more bright of a blue as opposed to the unpolished side. And you still have all those ugly scratches and swirls that are on the paint, clouding your vision, and it looks very nasty when you have a brand new car and you're driving around with all these kind of scratches and swirls in your paint. So don't be that guy that invests his money in a nice, beautiful, your dream car, and then treat it like a nightmare. Join us next time on the next step of this series, which is protecting the paint. We're going to show you guys everything that goes into protecting the paint and maintaining it so that your paint looks great at all times. I have a lot of work ahead of me. I'm going to continue with polishing the rest of this vehicle. We'll see you guys next time on our next step of this process.